All right. So, Trump's inauguration was rather eventful, as you would expect. So, I have two articles. One, a fact check on his inaugural address, because unlike most inaugural addresses, his was basically a campaign rally speech. So, he made a lot of false claims. The ones he has been saying from the beginning. And then he also signed a bunch of executive orders that range from doable to dog whistle. So let's start with his inaugural address. All right. So let's see here. In his first address after being sworn in on Monday, President Donald Trump repeated several false and misleading statements that he made during his campaign. They included claims about immigration, the economy, electric vehicles, and the Panama Canal. In remarks later at the Capitol's Emancipation Hall, he issued a number of other false claims, including one that distorts pardons made by President Joe Biden as he left office. Here's a look at the facts. Biden did not pardon 33 murderers. The fact that that even has to be said is just, ew. All right, so this is what he claimed. Trump at Emancipation Hall said Biden pardoned, 33 murderers? Absolute murderers, the worst murderers. You know, when you get the death sentence in the United States, you had to be bad. Actually, no, that's not it. There are plenty of innocent people on death row. That's actually one of the reasons the main reason why people, such as myself, are against the death penalty. I mean, if you could be 100% sure that you have the right person, that would give you a better footing, but the fact is there are people on death row who didn't do the thing they were accused of. So, no, just because you're on death row doesn't mean you're bad. All right, so here are the facts. Biden announced on December 23rd that he was commuting the sentences of 37 of the 40 people on federal death row, converting their punishments to life imprisonment. A commutation does not exonerate the person. Oh, gee, we went from killing the person to making them spend their life in prison. How is that exactly, first off, pardoning anybody? And it sure as hell not releasing anybody. So, okay. So the government is now saving money by not putting people to death, but by making them spend the rest of their lives in prison. Yeah, that's just such a horrible thing for Biden to do. So, and this doesn't even get into whether these people are innocent and wrongfully on death row. This is just saying, yeah, they're going to spend the rest of their lives in prison as opposed to being put to death. Okay, what's the problem here? In making the announcement, Biden said, "These commutations are consistent with the moratorium my administration has imposed on federal executions." Another good thing. In cases other than terrorism and hate-motivated mass murder. Which sounds reasonable. I still don't like the death penalty for those cases either because, again, unless you can be 100% sure that you're putting to death the right person. Just see how many people in Guantanamo were actually deemed to have done nothing wrong and that they were imprisoned simply because they're Muslim. So, yeah, I No, that bothers me still, but it's still better than it was before. The move spared the lives of people convicted in killings, including the slayings of police and military officers, people on federal land, and those involved in deadly bank robberies or drug deals, as well as the killings of guards or prisoners in federal facilities. The three federal inmates that now face execution are Dylan Roof, who carried out the 2015 racist slayings of 9 black members of Mother Emanuel AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina; 2013 Boston Marathon bobber Zokhar Tsarnaev; and Robert Bowers, who fatally shot 11 congregants in Pittsburgh's Tree of Life Synagogue in 2018, the deadliest anti Semitic attack in U.S. history. Well, you know, I'm not a fan of the death penalty for reasons I mentioned, but these people were caught dead to rights, so it's not like the wrong people were caught. So, even though I'm still not a fan of the death penalty for no other reason, it costs more to put someone to death than it is to sentence them to life in prison. I'm not going to stick my neck out for any of these people. All right. False claim number 2. So, 2020, by the way, that election was totally rigged. Remarks at Emancipation Hall. No, it wasn't rigged. The facts. The election was not rigged. Authorities who have reviewed the election, including Trump's own attorney general, have concluded the election was fair. Biden won the Electoral College by 306 votes to Trump's 232, and the popular vote by more than 7 million ballots. Recounts in key states affirmed Biden's victory, and lawsuits challenging the results were unsuccessful. All right, so claim number 3. Calling the Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attacks on the United States Capitol the Unselect Committee of Political Thugs, Trump alleged that then House Speaker Nancy Pelosi turned down the offer of 10,000 soldiers on January 6, 2021, and that she was in charge of security at the Capitol. Again, remarks at Emancipation Hall. The actual facts, which shouldn't surprise you, none of that is true. Trump has frequently claimed Pelosi rejected his offer to send National Guard troops to the Capitol on January 6th. While he was involved in the discussions in the days prior to January 6th about whether the National Guard would be called ahead of the joint session, he issued no such order or formal request before or during the rioting, and the Guard's arrival was delayed for hours as Pentagon officials deliberated over how to proceed. Because Trump was too busy sitting there enjoying himself, watching the chaos on TV, because it's chaos he created. So, yeah. Not surprised that he didn't want the National Guard there. It was actually Mike Pence who called in the National Guard. In a 2022 interview with the Democratic-led House committee that investigated the attack, Christopher Miller, the acting defense secretary at the time, confirmed that there was no order from the president. Pelosi did not direct the National Guard. However, as the Capitol came under attack, she and then Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell called for military assistance, including from the National Guard. Okay, I was wrong about that. I thought Mike Pence called in somebody, but maybe I'm mistaken. The Capitol Police Board made the decision on whether to call National Guard troops to the Capitol. It is made up of the House Sergeant-at-Arms, the Senate Sergeant-at-Arms, and the architect of the Capitol. The board decided not to call the Guard ahead of the insurrection, but did eventually request assistance after the rioting had already begun and the troops arrived several hours later. Yeah, there's a lot to be said about how security was handled on January 6th. The House Sergeant at Arms reported to Pelosi that the Senate Sergeant at Arms reported to McConnell. There is no evidence that either Pelosi or McConnell directed the security officials not to call the guard beforehand. Drew Hamill, a then spokesman for Pelosi, said after the insurrection that Pelosi was never informed of such a request. All right, so claim number 4. Trump, a Republican, said in his inaugural address that the U.S. government fails to protect our magnificent, law-abiding American citizens, but provides sanctuary and protection for dangerous criminals, many from prisons and mental institutions that have illegally entered our country from all over the world. I still am convinced that he thinks that asylum seekers are people who actually escaped mental asylums. Because why does he keep harping about mental institutions and Hannibal Lecter unless he honestly doesn't know what asylum means? So anyway, the facts. There is no evidence other countries are sending their criminals or the mentally ill across the border. Trump frequently brought up this claim during his most recent campaign. Okay, claim number 5. I will direct all members of my cabinet to marshal the vast powers at their disposal to defeat what was record inflation and rapidly bringing down costs and prices. And that's from his inaugural address. And my question is, how the hell does he plan on doing that? What does he think the government can do to bring down prices? There is a group of people who have done that. People in this country would scream communist or socialist at those people. So I'm not quite sure what he thinks he can do. And let's take the price of eggs, which are currently very high right now, because there is a pandemic of avian flu. So, considering how he botched a pandemic affecting humans, I can't imagine he could give a rat's ass about stopping a pandemic amongst birds. So, yeah, there is also that. But anyway, the facts. Inflation peaked at 9.1% in June 2022 after rising steadily in the first 17 months of Democrat Joe Biden's presidency from a low 0.1% in May 2020. The most recent data shows that as of December, it had fallen to 2.9%. Other historical periods have seen higher inflation, such as more than 14% rate in 1980, according to the Federal Reserve. All right. And that's not even pointing out that the rest of the world is even worse off. The average price of basic consumer goods has seen major spikes in recent years. For example, a dozen large eggs went from a low of $1.33 in August 2020 to $4.82 in January 2023. They decreased in price to $2.07 in September 2023, but are currently on the rise again at $4.15 as of December, partly attributed to a lingering outbreak of bird flu coinciding with high demand during the holiday baking season. What, you mean supply and demand actually works? Shocking! A gallon of whole milk rose to a high of $4.22 in November 2022, up from $2.25 at the start of Biden's term. As of December, it was at $4.10. Gasoline fell as low as $1.77 a gallon under Trump, but that price dip happened during coronavirus pandemic lockdowns when few people were driving. The low prices were due to a global health crisis, not Trump's policies. Under Biden, gasoline rose to a high of $5.06 in June 2022. It has since been on a downward trend at $3.15 as of December. And I might add that to help lower prices, Biden actually opened up our oil reserve. So, yeah, he brought down prices. I mean, there's only so much he can do, but he did bring down prices. But anyway, claim number 6. Promising to establish an external revenue service to collect all duties, tariffs, and revenues, Trump said in his inaugural address it will be massive amounts of money pouring into our treasury coming from foreign sources. First off, what? An external revenue service? Does he not know how revenue is collected? What the hell? Oh, right. He thinks that foreign governments are going to be paying these. Right. That's not how tariffs work. Anyway, the facts. Nearly all economists point out that American consumers will pay at least part, if not most, of the cost of the tariffs. Exactly. American companies will pay the tariffs and they'll pass those costs on to the consumer because that's what they do. Some exporters overseas may accept lower profits to offset some of the cost of the duties, and the dollar will likely rise in value compared with the currencies of the countries facing tariffs, which could also offset some of the impact. But the tariffs won't have the desired impact of spurring more production in the U.S. unless they make foreign-made products more expensive for U.S. consumers. In addition, many of Trump's supporters and even some of his appointees argue that he intends to use tariffs primarily as a bargaining tool to extract concessions from other countries. Yet, if an external revenue service is established, it certainly suggests Trump is expecting to impose and collect many duties. Which, again, is not paid by foreigners, but American companies. So, yeah. Now, in a perfect world, a lot of these big corporations would, give a crap about the American consumer and not pass on all these costs. But the smaller ones, what are they going to do? They're going to have to because they're not going to be able to stay in business. So, yeah. And let's face it, a lot of these bigger corporations only care about their shareholders, and so they're only going to do so much to help the American consumer because they're beholden to their shareholders who will expect a big profit. All right. So, claim number 7. We will revoke the electric vehicle mandate, saving the auto industry and keeping my sacred pledge to our great American auto workers. And that's from his inaugural address. And the facts. It's misleading to claim that such a mandate exists. In April 2023, the Environmental Protection Agency announced strict limits on greenhouse gas emissions from passenger vehicles. The agency says these limits could be met if 67% of new vehicle sales are electric by 2032. And yet, the new rule would not require automakers to boost electric vehicle sales directly. It sets emissions limits and allows automakers to choose how to meet them. In 2019, Kamala Harris co-sponsored a bill as a U.S. Senator called the Zero Emission Vehicles Act that would have required 100% of new passenger vehicles sold to be zero emission by 2040. The bill, which stalled in committee, did not ban ownership of vehicles that produce emissions. Okay. Claim number, 8 now? Discussing his desire for the U.S. to take back the Panama Canal, American ships are being severely overcharged and not treated fairly in any way, shape, or form, and that includes the United States Navy. And above all, China is operating the Panama Canal. Again, from his inaugural address. And the facts. Officials in Panama have denied Trump's claims that China is operating the canal and that the U.S. is being overcharged. Riquarte Vasquez, administrator of the canal, said in an interview with the Associated Press that there's no discrimination in the fees. The price rules are uniform for absolutely all those who transit the canal and are clearly defined, he said. Choking on my own saliva, sorry. Good God. He also said China was not operating the canal. He noted Chinese companies operating in the ports on either end of the canal were part of a Hong Kong consortium that won a bidding process in 1997. He added that U.S. and Taiwanese companies are operating other ports along the canal as well. But when has facts ever gotten in the way of Trump? Vasquez stressed that the canal can't give special treatment to U.S. flagged ships because of a neutrality treaty. He said requests for exemptions are routinely rejected because the process is clear and there must be arbitrary variations. The only exception in the neutrality treaty is for American warships which receive expedited passage. Trump complained about rising charges for ships transiting the canal, has refused to rule out the use of military force to seize control of the canal. This from a guy who trumpets how there were no new wars under his administration, that there was peace, blah, 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 blah. And now he's giddy about starting a war. Regardless of whether we could take Panama without trying hard is literally not the point. He wants to start a war. The United States built the canal in the early 1900s as it looked for ways to facilitate the transit of commercial and military vessels between its coasts. Washington relinquished control of the waterway to Panama on December 31st, 1999, under a treaty signed in 1977 by President Jimmy Carter, a Democrat. Which, by the way, Trump ego is so fragile that he insisted on raising the flags to full staff, even though we were still in the 30-day window where people were honoring Jimmy Carter, because he couldn't handle that he isn't the center of attention. So, but and Mike Johnson said, okay, tomorrow the flags can go back to full staff. But the funny thing is, it was so cold that many federal agencies couldn't raise the flags because the cords were frozen, which someone pointed out was poetic justice. But anyway, that is the end of the fact-checking portion of this video. Now let's go into what executive orders he signed. And this is titled, Trump signs executive actions on January 6th, TikTok, immigration, and more. So let's see what the orange dipshit did. President Trump on Monday signed a flurry of executive orders, memorandums, and proclamations after his inauguration, reversing many of his predecessors' policies and reinstating actions from his first term in office. He signed the first batch in front of a packed crowd at Capital One Arena, drawing cheers before then moving to the Oval Office to sign more. Trump and his officials also signaled a slew of other executive actions to come soon, ranging from campaign priorities like border security to culture war issues like DEI policies. And here are some of the key orders either signed or signaled on Monday. So, Trump issued pardons Monday for some 1,500 defendants who participated in the siege on the U.S. Capitol 4 years ago, wiping away scores of convictions for people who helped delay the certification of the 2020 election and upend the peaceful transfer of power. Those pardoned include rioters convicted of violence against police. For those of you who are so convinced that he would only pardon the nonviolent people because that's what he said he would do, he didn't. He pardoned everybody. Enrique Tarrio, the former head of the far-right Proud Boys, who had been sentenced to 22 years in federal prison, also received a pardon. In addition, Trump commuted the sentences of 14 people, including Stuart Rhodes, the founder of the far-right Oath Keepers group, which, as of this recording, they are now both out of jail. Trump also directed the Justice Department to dismiss pending cases that stem from the attack on the Capitol. Trump signed an order pausing a law that would ban the mega popular social media app TikTok unless its China-based parent company spun off its U.S.-based operations. The bipartisan divest or ban law passed Congress in April 2024 and was signed into law by then President Biden. Trump himself sought to ban the app during his first term in 2020, but that effort was blocked by the courts. I am instructing the Attorney General not to take any action to enforce the act for a period of 75 days from today to allow my administration opportunity to determine the appropriate course forward in an orderly way that protects national security while avoiding an abrupt shutdown of a communications platform used by millions of Americans, Trump's order states. Now, before this happened, or maybe during, I'm not sure, TikTok initially went dark on Sunday and then came back a few hours later because, Trump signaled he was going to sign an executive order not to enforce the ban. And all of a sudden, it became an app of kissing Trump's ass and a right-wing app. And it basically is now doing what the U.S. government was concerned China was doing, which is only allowing certain content. Now, granted, under Chinese law, things like Tiananmen Square was hard to find on TikTok, but it wasn't this blatant. So, yeah. All right. Another order rescinded 78 Biden-era executive actions, orders, and presidential memoranda. They include a wide variety of actions related to racial equality, climate, migration, and gender policy, the federal workforce, and Biden's recent move to take Cuba off the list of state sponsors of terrorism. Well, that didn't take long because Biden did that one literally as he was leaving office, which makes you wonder if Biden really actually cared about that. Why didn't he do that earlier? But it's obvious he did it because he wanted to irk Trump and Marco Rubio, who, as of this recording, has been confirmed as Secretary of State. So, yeah. Yeah, that one was a head scratcher because is Cuba a state sponsor of terrorism? No. But that Biden waited till he was leaving office is just weird. All right, moving on. Another executive order directs the heads of all executive departments and agencies to deliver emergency price relief consistent with applicable law to the American people and increase the prosperity of the American worker. Speaking at Capital One Arena, Trump said this order would help defeat inflation and rapidly bring down the cost of daily life. Last month, Trump admitted it is hard to bring grocery prices down once they rise. So that's probably just a dog whistle to his supporters so they think that he's actually accomplishing something when he's not. Because, again, that's not how any of this works. And again, the example I used earlier was egg prices. There's a freaking bird flu epidemic or pandemic or whatever. I don't see how you expect egg prices to go down when there aren't enough eggs to deal with the supply, the demand. Anyway, so here's the big one. Trump signed executive orders making sweeping changes to immigration and border security. They include declaring a national emergency at the border. Trump signed an order declaring that a national emergency exists at the southern border of the United States and allowing for the deployment of armed forces and the National Guard to respond. Clarifying the military's role in border security. This action directs the military to prioritize the protection of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the United States along our national borders. This includes by repealing forms of invasion, including unlawful mass migration, narcotics trafficking, human smuggling and trafficking, and other criminal activities. I kind of thought that that's what Customs and Border Protection was for, but okay. But then again, he did declare a national emergency, even though immigration is down. But, again, why should we let facts get in the way? Ending catch and release, continue building the wall, and reinstating remain in Mexico. A sweeping order on securing our borders calls for establishing physical barriers at the border, ending the practice known as catch and release, and reinstituting a policy that requires asylum seekers to wait in Mexico while their claim is processed. Too bad nobody told Mexico. So, for those who don't know, catch and release is basically that the undocumented give themselves up to ICE, and then ICE releases them with a court date into the U.S. Under the understanding that they will show up for their court date. So, yeah. And that's why he wants people to remain in Mexico while their claim is processed. But, yeah, what I read is that that's news to Mexico. Mexico never agreed to this. So, it'll be interesting to see how that works. Because Trump has already irked the president of Mexico by threatening tariffs. And for those who think that Mexico somehow acquiesced to Trump's threats of bullying, they did not. It was actually pointing out facts to Trump that made Trump reconsider his threat. So there is that. Designating criminal cartels as terrorists. This order defines drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations in order to expedite the removal of members of groups like Tren de Aragua, a transnational criminal organization from Venezuela, and MS-13. I really don't know what to think of this, because this could easily be used, considering that this is a man who wants to get rid of all undocumented and actually all immigrants, not even those who are just undocumented, They could easily just proclaim that they're part of these groups as an excuse to get rid of them. Because on paper, I have no problem with getting rid of criminal gangs. I'm fine with that. I'm just worried that he will claim people who aren't a part of these groups to be part of them, so he has an excuse to deport them. All right, suspending refugee resettlement. Trump signed an order suspending the U.S. refugee admissions program. So basically, he's not, in case you guys were worried that, oh no, he's just getting rid of the bad undocumented people. And he's not going after, people who request asylum. He's suspending the refugee program, which is asylum. So, yeah. Now, how much of this is legal? I don't know. But this next one is 100% not legal, but ending birthright citizenship. Trump signed an order that would end birthright citizenship for children born in the United States to parents without legal status. The order argues that the 14th Amendment, which enshrines birthright citizenship, does not extend to individuals who are born in the country but not subject to the jurisdiction thereof. No, but the kids would be subject to the jurisdiction thereof. All right, whatever. Now, at least it mentioned legal status because I've used myself as an example. When I was born, my parents only had green cards. So I hope he would consider that legal status. I honestly do not know whether he considers that legal status or not. I really don't. Because I don't trust him as far as I can throw him. He and J.D. Vance, while on the campaign trail, questioned the programs that allowed Haitians to be here under temporary protective status. So I question what they consider to be legal status. And it says this action already seen legal challenges. Yeah, activist groups have already sued. They've already put in place the process to get this challenge because this is part of the freaking 14th Amendment. So, because if you're born in this country, you are subjected to the laws of this country. So you are subjected to jurisdiction thereof. So even if the parents aren't, the kids are. But, let's just, I don't know how you would even enforce that. But again, we have a 14th Amendment. So there is that. That is not how you make changes to the Constitution. All right. Enhanced vetting and screening. This order instructs federal agencies to vet and screen to the maximum degree possible all aliens who intend to be admitted, enter, or are already inside the United States, particularly those aliens coming from regions or nations with identified security risks. Which sounds good, right? We do not have the manpower for this. So I don't see how that is workable. But these people are vetted and screened. It's not like, but Trump wants to claim that under Biden there were open borders and people were allowed in, no questions asked. And that's not how any of this works. They were vetted and screened. It's just that people that have there been people who came who committed crimes and who somehow managed to get back in? Yeah, absolutely. There are people who somehow got under the radar. But again, that tells me that that's because we don't have the manpower rather than they were just completely ignored. All right. Protect American citizens against invasion. Who's invading us? This order instructs federal agencies to use all lawful means to ensure the faithful execution of the immigration laws of the United States against all inadmissible and removable aliens. Again, that's assuming that that wasn't happening before. It was. Is there a manpower issue that there are people who got through the cracks? Absolutely. But these last two were just dog whistles to his base so people will think he's being tough on crime when no, he's not. This is just going to cause more trouble because number one, we don't have the manpower. Number two, this is just going to encourage what's the term? I'm blanking on the term where you profiling. That racial profiling. You see say a Hispanic who, God forbid, is speaking Spanish to a bunch of people because that's their native tongue, or they are talking to other people whose English is not as good or is their native tongue, and they can immediately be subject to vetting and screening, even if they're American citizens, because they spoke the wrong language or they look Hispanic. And when I say look Hispanic, is there are plenty of white Hispanics who people would not know are Hispanic. They're talking about brown Hispanics. So, yeah. Those last two are total dog whistles. Okay, and here's another joyous one. Restore the death penalty. Because nothing says care and compassion for your fellow citizens than let's see how many we can kill regardless of whether they were wrongfully convicted. Trump signed an order reinstating the federal death penalty, instructing the Attorney General to pursue the death penalty for all crimes of a severity demanding its use. In particular, it calls for the death penalty to be sought in all cases involving the murder of a law enforcement officer and all capital crimes committed by immigrants without legal status. So no longer does he want to just deport criminals, he wants to kill them. All right. Cool. I mean, I'm talking about those that are committing crimes because make up your mind. Do you want to deport those who commit crimes, or do you want them to stay here and get prosecuted? Because you can't have it both ways. I'm not quite sure if he understands what he wants either. All right. Trump signed an order ending the weaponization of the federal government. That is hilarious. The only person weaponizing the government is him. Trump and his allies have long claimed that the Justice Department under Biden was weaponized against him, citing the various legal cases against him and other conservatives. Right, because it's not that they actually broke laws and are actual criminals. No, Biden is just wrongfully attacking them because they exist and that they're political rivals or something. DOJ prosecutors wound down the two federal criminal cases against Trump after he won the 2024 election. Right, because that totally sounds like weaponization to me. Following long-standing department precedent. In a report on the government's election interference case released last week, Special Counsel Jack Smith said the evidence against Trump would have led to his conviction at trial, if not for his election victory that led to charges being dropped. And now a federal judge is preventing even Congress from seeing the second volume of Jack Smith's report. So, yeah, that totally sounds like weaponization to me. What the holy hell? Throughout the 2024 campaign, Trump pledged to punish, prosecute, or jail his political enemies. Trump has repeatedly indicated that he would use federal law enforcement as part of a campaign to exact retribution. I mean, come on, he's saying it out loud. How can you still think that he's the good guy here? That he's the innocent party and that he never weaponized anything, that Biden is the bad guy? Even if he didn't do it his first term, he is threatening to do it his second term. Something Biden did not do. Because you do not weaponize the DOJ by allowing the DOJ to investigate your own son. That is not how weaponization works. Trump signed a freeze on all federal hiring, excepting the military and a number of other excluded categories. At a Capital One arena, Trump told his supporters the temporary pause would ensure that we're only hiring competent people who are faithful to the American public. Translation, faithful to him. Because federal agencies have been doing that. And the only reason he's exempting the military is simply because the military has a recruiting problem. They don't have enough. So Trump is allowing for the military to somehow keep up their ranks, which they aren't managing to do anyway. All right. He also signed an order requiring federal workers to return to the office in person and a regulatory freeze, preventing the creation of new federal regulations. Well, that one doesn't surprise me because regulations is a bad word for these people. Why are we requiring federal workers to return to the office? Why can't they work remotely? I mean, you're saving money on these buildings because you don't have to heat a building nobody uses. You do not have to keep the lights on in a building nobody uses. You can actually repurpose it for something. So I'm not sure why so many people are demanding this. Amazon demanded this. Now Trump is demanding this. I just do not understand it. It would be saving you money, you enormous jackasses. Anyway, this should come as no surprise because he did it in his first term. Trump signed an order titled Putting America First in International Environmental Agreements, which included withdrawing from the Paris Climate Accord. Trump previously withdrew from the Paris Accords during his first term, but Biden rejoined the agreement in 2021. Trump intends to declare a national energy emergency, aiming to cut red tape and regulations for the energy industry, and a second one specific to Alaskan resources, an incoming White House official told reporters on a background conference call. That national energy emergency will unlock a variety of different authorities that will enable our nation to quickly build again, to produce coal and natural resources, to create jobs, to create prosperity, and to strengthen our nation's national security, the official said. The official said energy prices are too high, but declined on the call to name a lower target price. So, yeah, there is that. Not to mention, energy production soared under Biden. So, yeah, there is that. The action will end what incoming Trump officials call the electric vehicle mandate and will end efforts to curtail consumer choice on the things that consumers use every single day, whether it be shower heads. What is his obsession with that? Whether it be gas stoves, another conservative obsession, whether it be dishwashers and the like, the officials said. So basically, they don't want appliances to be energy efficient because Trump thinks that because he doesn't know how to use shower heads, so he could actually wash his hair, what little hair he has. He thinks that energy efficiency is the problem and not because he doesn't know how to change the adjustment on the shower head. I mean, there is a knob on the side of the shower head that you can move. So the shower spray will be a different would come out differently from different holes in the shower head. So I'm not sure what his problem is. Nobody has called for the end of gas stoves. And I don't know what his problem with dishwashers is. So, Trump has long railed against energy efficiency standards on the campaign trail and specifically taken aim at electric vehicle mandates, a term he uses to encompass all policies designed to encourage a transition to battery-powered cars. Rules actually requiring 100% of vehicles to be electric do not exist on the federal level. But again, when has facts ever gotten in the way? Oh boy. Now we're getting to culture war issues. Trump signed an executive action Monday night dealing with gender identity. The details weren't immediately made public. However, an incoming White House official speaking on background had told reporters earlier in the day that an order would make it the policy of the United States to recognize two biologically distinct genders, male and female. And considering most trans people transition from male to female or vice versa, I fail to see how this is going to do what you think it's going to do. Because nobody is claiming to... I mean, it would suck for those who are non-binary or even intersex. So I'm not saying that this is a good thing, but how is this going against trans people? It's mostly not. Because, again, most trans people transition from male to female or female to male. So that doesn't change. That wouldn't change under this law. Because they would still be either male or female. So I'm not sure I don't think this is doing what you think it's going to do, except to make those hateful of trans people and other people who they don't understand, like non-binary. I don't think that's going to... Otherwise, that's not going to do what you think it's going to do. There are sexes that are, these are sexes that are not changeable, and that they are grounded in fundamental and incontrovertible reality, the official said. And he's right, they're not changeable. Sex is not changeable. That's why nobody is saying they're trying to change their biological sex, because they know they can't. They know that they were born a certain sex. Nobody's disputing that. And as for gender, yes, it is grounded in fundamental and incontrovertible reality. You just don't like that reality, but it's still based in reality. The change will require government agencies to use the definitions on documents like passports, visas, and employee records, the officials said. Taxpayer funds will not be allowed to be used for transition services, the officials said. For the love of all that is sacred here, why not? How is this harming anybody? If someone needs to transition, they need to transition. I'm not sure how this is supposed to help anybody. I mean, this has less of a leg to stand on than actually people who don't want to pay for abortion, don't want the taxpayer dollars to pay for an abortion, because you don't believe in it. Okay? And no, I'm not saying that they actually have a leg to stand on in the taxpayer dollars to pay for abortion either. But at least that is theoretically religious based. I say theoretically because they literally say in the Bible how to have an abortion. But they don't say squat about trans people in the Bible, so all right. Now, use definitions on documents like passports. When I just recently renewed my passport, and it specifically asked me if I wanted to change my gender marker. So, what definitions are we talking about here? The second action will end diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in the federal government, the official said, giving as an example environmental justice programs in the U.S. Department of Agriculture, as well as diversity training. Okay. Environmental justice programs? What? What does that have to do with diversity, equity, and inclusion? And diversity training. Yes, because we certainly wouldn't want people to understand other people's points of view. No, we want to have people look at others and think they're weird and want to shun them. Because that will make for a great united States, united companies, whatever it is. Yeah, that would really help getting people to know one another. Yeah, okay. So that is the end of that article. So with that, that is all I have for this video. So that it was his inauguration day, which was very annoying because I avoided it. I tried to avoid it, and then I turned on the news and it was still going on. So I was not happy about that. So with that, I will see you guys in the next video.